What if the woman everyone just humiliated at a $100 million auction turned out to be the secret owner of the entire building tonight? A simple dress becomes the symbol of power and vengeance as one woman rises from the ashes of their cruelty to reclaim everything they tried to strip away. Stay tuned, because when the truth comes out, some people will lose everything. And the girl they mocked will be the one holding the keys to their fate. Emma steps into the auction hall, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble, the grand chandeliers casting a golden glow that makes the room sparkle like a vault of diamonds. The air is heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of clinking champagne glasses as the elite glide through the room in gowns that drip with jewels, each dress more extravagant than the last. Emma's dress is a simple black sheath, plain, unadorned, clinging to her figure like a shadow. Eyes turn, lips curl, whispers ripple through the crowd like a venomous wave. Who let the help in a woman in a glittering silver gown sneers, her red lips curving into a wicked smirk. Did the waitstaff start wearing cocktail dresses now? A man beside her chuckles, his champagne glass tilted to his mouth, his eyes sweeping over Emma as if she's something that crawled in off the street. Maybe she's here to collect empty glasses, he says, laughter bubbling up, eyes glinting with cruel delight. Emma clenches her fists at her sides, her nails biting into her palms as she forces herself to keep moving, her head high, her jaw tight, her breath coming in shallow, controlled bursts. The room is a sea of designer gowns and diamond-studded heels, the air heavy with laughter, with judgment, with the stinging scent of condescension. "Look at her shoes," another woman whispers, her voice dripping with scorn. "Are those plastic?" "No," Vanessa says, appearing from the crowd like a lioness stalking her prey, her golden dress clinging to her curves like liquid fire, her eyes dark and glinting. "They're cheap. Like her." Vanessa steps closer, her red lacquered nails clicking against her glass as she lifts it to her lips, her gaze sweeping over Emma's simple dress, her eyes dancing with amusement. "Did you lose your way, sweetheart?" she purrs, her voice saccharine sweet, her smile razor sharp. "Or are you just here to beg for scraps?" Laughter erupts around them, the sound crashing over Emma like a tidal wave, drowning her in humiliation. Her cheeks flush, her chest tightens, her pulse pounds in her ears like a drum, but she refuses to look away, refuses to back down. Vanessa leans in closer, her perfume a suffocating cloud of jasmine and venom. "You really should have dressed for the occasion," she whispers, her eyes narrowing, her lips curving into a cruel grin. "But I guess when you have nothing, you wear nothing." The crowd howls, glasses raised, champagne sloshing, eyes glittering as Emma stands there, her fists clenched, her jaw tight, her chest heaving as Vanessa steps back, tossing her hair over her shoulder, a satisfied smirk stretching across her painted lips. Emma's nails dig deeper into her palms, the sting grounding her, anchoring her as the room spins, the laughter echoing, bouncing off the marble walls, ricocheting through her skull like a gunshot. And as Vanessa saunters away, her heels clicking against the floor like a victory march, Emma lifts her chin, her eyes blazing, her heart pounding, a single thought burning through her mind like a mantra. Let them laugh. Let them sneer. Because tonight, the girl in the simple dress is about to teach them all a lesson they will never forget. The room hums with the sound of cruel laughter, glasses clinking, eyes flashing with the gleam of people who think they own the world. Emma weaves through the crowd, her shoulders back, her jaw clenched, each step heavy with the sting of their sneers, their whispers swirling around her like a cloud of venom. "Is she lost a woman in a scarlet gown?" sneers, her diamond necklace glinting like a noose around her throat. "I mean, who shows up to $1 million auction dressed like that?" Another woman, draped in emerald silk, tosses her head back and laughs, her eyes locked onto Emma's simple black dress. Maybe she thought this was a charity event. She purrs, her gaze sweeping over Emma as though she's something rotting on the sidewalk. "I'm sure we could all spare some change." Laughter erupts, a wave of sound crashing over Emma, suffocating her, pressing against her skin like a heavy, unrelenting weight. Emma's hands tremble at her sides, her fists clenching, her nails digging into her palms as she pushes forward, her breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts. "Excuse me," she says, trying to move past a group of men in sharp tuxedos, their champagne glasses held aloft like weapons. One of them steps into her path, blocking her way, his lips curving into a smug, condescending grin. "Whoa there, sweetheart," he drawls, his eyes raking over her like she's a bug beneath his shoe. "Did you sneak in here looking for free hors d'oeuvres? Or are you here to beg for a handout?" His friends snicker, their laughter a chorus of cruel delight, their eyes glinting as they watch Emma's cheeks flush, her jaw tightening, her pulse roaring in her ears. "Maybe she's here to clean up," another man says, swirling his champagne glass, the golden liquid catching the light. "That dress looks like it came from the clearance rack at a discount store." Emma swallows hard, her throat thick, her breath catching as she forces herself to hold her ground, to keep her chin high, to keep her heart from shattering beneath the weight of their jeers. But the room is closing in, the walls pressing closer, the air thick and heavy and stifling as Vanessa appears again, her golden gown glinting like a weapon, her eyes dark and glittering with malice. "Oh, there you are," Vanessa says, her voice dripping with mock concern, her lips curving into a wicked, triumphant smile. "I was just telling everyone how much I admire your bold fashion choices." The crowd roars, laughter crashing over Emma like a tidal wave, drowning her in humiliation. Vanessa steps closer, her eyes locked onto Emma's, her breath hot against Emma's cheek as she leans in, her voice a low, venomous purr. "Tell me," she whispers, her gaze sweeping over Emma's dress, her lips twisting into a sneer. "Did you steal that from a thrift store, or did they just give it to you out of pity?" The crowd erupts again, glasses raised, eyes gleaming, voices rising in a chorus of cruelty. Each laugh another blow, another stab, another knife twisting deeper and deeper. Emma's vision blurs, her skin prickling beneath the relentless gaze of 100 mocking eyes, her pulse pounding in her ears like a relentless drum. Vanessa steps back, her head thrown back in laughter, her hair cascading like a waterfall of molten gold as she raises her glass high, her voice ringing through the room like a victory cry. To Charity she shouts, her eyes locked onto Emma's, her smile widening. "Because tonight, we're all giving something to the less fortunate." The crowd roars, glasses clinking, eyes flashing, laughter echoing through the grand hall like a cruel, haunting refrain. And as Vanessa turns away, her hips swaying, her heels clicking against the floor like a queen on a victory march, Emma stands there, her fists clenched, her jaw tight, her heart pounding, her vision blurring as the room spins, as the walls close in, as the laughter crashes over her like a wave of fire. But through the haze of humiliation, through the roar of cruel laughter, a single thought blazes through her mind like a burning brand. Let them laugh now, because when the truth comes out, they'll all be the ones on their knees. The auctioneer's gavel slams down, the sound echoing through the room like a gunshot, silencing the laughter, commanding attention. The spotlight swings to the stage, illuminating the priceless art piece, a glittering diamond-encrusted sculpture shimmering beneath the blinding light. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer booms, his voice echoing off the marble walls, his eyes sweeping the room with practiced confidence. "The bidding for this exquisite masterpiece will start at $1 million. The crowd leans forward, eyes gleaming, hands clutching paddles, anticipation crackling through the air like electricity. Emma stands at the back of the room, her breath shallow, her nails biting into her palms as she watches Vanessa slink to the front, her golden gown a blinding, shimmering weapon. 1 million, Vanessa says, raising her paddle high, her eyes flashing, her lips curving into a smug, triumphant smirk. The crowd murmurs, impressed, awed, heads nodding in approval. Vanessa tosses her hair, glancing over her shoulder, her gaze landing on Emma, her eyes dark, wicked, glinting like a predator's. Anyone else, the auctioneer calls, his gaze sweeping the room. Silence. Then a man in a tailored suit raises his paddle. 1.5 million. Vanessa's smile tightens, her jaw clenching, her nails tapping against her glass as she lifts her paddle again. 2 million. The guests gasp, whispers spreading through the room like wildfire. Eyes darting to Vanessa, then to the stage, then back to Emma, who stands frozen, her fists clenched, her chest tight, her pulse pounding in her ears. "Do I hear 2.5 million?" the auctioneer calls, his voice rising, his eyes scanning the room, searching for the next challenger. Vanessa turns, her gaze zeroing in on Emma, her lips curving into a slow, vicious smile. "What's wrong?" "Sweetheart." Vanessa purrs, her voice dripping with faux concern, her eyes glinting with malice. "Cat got your tongue, or did you finally realize you don't belong here?" Laughter erupts, sharp and biting, the sound slamming into Emma like a fist, knocking the air from her lungs, sending her heart crashing against her ribs. 2.5 million. A man calls from the corner, his paddle raised, his eyes fixed on the stage. Vanessa doesn't even look. She raises her paddle, her chin lifted, her gaze locked onto Emma's, a cruel, satisfied smile spreading across her red-painted lips. 5 million, Vanessa says, her voice ringing through the room, echoing through the grand hall like a queen's decree. The crowd gasps, heads turning, eyes widening, whispers rising, a wave of awe and admiration washing over Vanessa as she stands there, basking in the attention, the power, the glory. "What's wrong, darling?" Vanessa taunts, her eyes flashing, her smile widening. "Didn't you bring your piggy bank?" Laughter crashes over Emma, a relentless, merciless roar, drowning her, suffocating her, the walls closing in, the air thick and heavy and burning. Emma's vision blurs, her cheeks flush, her pulse throbbing beneath her skin. Her fists clench so tight, her nails draw blood. Vanessa steps forward, her heels clicking against the marble, each step a taunt, a threat, a warning. "You really should have stayed in your lane," Vanessa whispers, leaning in close, her breath hot against Emma's cheek, her eyes dark, glinting, gleaming, because in this world, girls like you, they don't get to play with girls like me. Vanessa steps back, her laughter echoing through the hall as she raises her glass, her smile wicked, victorious, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "To knowing your place," Vanessa says, her glass raised high, her eyes locked onto Emma's, her lips curving into a cruel, razor-sharp grin. The crowd raises their glasses, the room a blur of sparkling crystal, diamond-studded gowns, flashing cameras, vicious smirks. "To stay in your lane," they echo, their voices a haunting, taunting refrain that crashes over Emma like a tidal wave, threatening to drag her under, to drown her, to crush her beneath its weight. And as Vanessa turns away, her hips swaying, her hair cascading down her back like a golden waterfall, Emma stands there, fists clenched, jaw tight, heart pounding, chest heaving, eyes burning with the fire of a woman who has just been torn to shreds in front of the world. But she doesn't move, doesn't blink, doesn't break, because Vanessa has no idea who she just tried to destroy. And when the truth comes out, she'll be the one crawling. The room is still humming with laughter, the sound a cruel, relentless echo that ricochets off the marble walls, bouncing back and forth like a haunting refrain. Vanessa basks in the spotlight, her golden gown gleaming, her red lips curving into a smug, satisfied grin as she lifts her glass high. The queen who just crushed her prey. But then, a voice booms through the room, deep, commanding, slicing through the laughter like a thunderclap. What the hell is going on here? The crowd falls silent, heads turning, eyes widening as Jonathan strides forward, his jaw clenched, his dark eyes blazing, his presence a storm wrapped in a sharp, tailored suit. Vanessa's smile falters, her fingers tightening around her champagne glass as Jonathan's gaze zeroes in on her, cold and unyielding. "Oh, Jonathan," Vanessa purrs, forcing a laugh, her eyes darting to her entourage, seeking reassurance, but they've already taken a step back, eyes downcast, faces pale. "We were just having a little fun." Fun. Jonathan's voice is a whip crack, sharp, slicing through the air as he moves closer, his fists clenched, his jaw tight. Is that what you call publicly humiliating the woman who owns this entire building? Gasps ripple through the crowd, champagne glasses freezing midair, eyes snapping to Emma, who stands at the back of the room, her fists still clenched, her chest heaving, her jaw set like stone. Vanessa's eyes widen, her face draining of color as she whips around, her gaze locking onto Emma, her lips parting, a strangled sound escaping her throat. No, she breathes, her voice thin, shaky, desperate. That's not... She can't be... Oh, but she is, Jonathan says, his voice rising, his eyes flashing as he steps forward, his gaze sweeping the room. Each word a hammer. Blow. Meet Emma Kingsley, the sole owner of Kingsley Properties and the woman funding tonight's entire auction. The room erupts in shocked murmurs, heads snapping to Emma, eyes wide, jaws slack, whispers spreading like wildfire. Vanessa's knees wobbled, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a spray of broken glass and golden liquid. The sound echoes through the room, sharp, piercing, a death knell for Vanessa's reputation. You mean, she's... Vanessa chokes out, her hands flying to her mouth, her eyes brimming with tears, her breaths coming in short, ragged bursts. Oh, and it gets better, Jonathan says, his lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile, his eyes dark, cold, unforgiving. Not only does she own the building you're standing in, but as of last week, she also acquired the real estate firm your father's company has been trying to secure a contract with. Vanessa's breath catches, a strangled sob escaping her throat as her knees buckle, her entire body collapsing against the marble floor, her manicured nails scraping against the stone as she tries to steady herself. No, she whispers, her voice breaking, her shoulders shaking as she shakes her head, her hair falling in wild tendrils around her face. No, that's not possible. Oh, it's more than possible, Jonathan says, his voice dripping with satisfaction, his gaze sweeping over Vanessa like she's something he's about to crush beneath his shoe. And now, the girl you tried to humiliate is the one who can decide whether your father's company sinks or swims. Vanessa sobs, her head bowing, her shoulders hunched, her tears splattering against the marble as the guests stare, their eyes wide, their breaths held, their faces pale with the realization that they just witnessed the queen of the auction brought to her knees. Emma steps forward, her heels clicking against the marble, her eyes blazing, her jaw tight, her fists clenched as she stops in front of Vanessa, the woman who poured champagne down her dress, the woman who called her a beggar, the woman who tried to strip her of her dignity in front of everyone. Vanessa's tear-filled eyes rise, her lip quivering, her breath coming in shallow, shaky gasps as she stares up at Emma, the girl she tried to destroy, the girl who now stands over her like a queen in a stained, champagne-soaked dress. Please, Vanessa whispers, her voice a broken, desperate plea, her hands shaking, her fingers clawing at the marble as she reaches for Emma, her eyes wide, wild, terrified. Please, Emma, you can't do this. My father. He'll lose everything. I'll lose everything. Emma's jaw tightens, her eyes darkening, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts as she leans down, her face inches from Vanessa's, her voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy the woman who now owns everything you're about to lose. And as the crowd watches, as the whispers rise, as the walls close in around Vanessa, Emma straightens, her spine straight, her shoulders back, her chin lifted high, her eyes blazing as she turns, her heels clicking against the marble as she walks away, leaving Vanessa crumpled, sobbing, shattered in the very hall where she once reigned supreme. And tonight, the real queen has claimed her throne. The room is suffocating in silence, the weight of Emma's revelation pressing down like a crushing tidal wave. Vanessa remains on the floor, her chest heaving, her fingers trembling against the cold marble as the whispers rise around her like a storm, each one a knife twisting deeper and deeper. She owns the building, a man murmurs, his eyes wide, his champagne glass shaking in his hand. And the real estate firm? A woman gasps, her diamond necklace glinting beneath the chandelier, her face pale as she stares at Vanessa. Vanessa's breath comes in sharp, ragged bursts, her eyes wide, wild, unseeing as she stares up at Emma, her lips quivering, her heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. "You don't understand," Vanessa chokes out, her voice breaking, her hands clutching the marble, her nails scraping against the stone as she tries to haul herself to her feet. "My father, his company. If you cancel the contract." Emma's eyes narrow, her jaw clenches, her fists trembling at her sides as she takes a slow, deliberate step forward, her heels clicking against the marble like gunshots. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Emma says, her voice a low, lethal purr, her eyes locked onto Vanessa's, her gaze dark, unforgiving. "You think you can walk all over people and never face the consequences? You think you can humiliate someone and never pay the price? Well, guess what?" Emma leans down, her face inches from Vanessa's, her breath hot against Vanessa's tear-streaked cheek, her voice dropping to a deadly, venomous whisper. "Tonight, the price just came due." Vanessa's breath shudders, a strangled sob escaping her throat, her shoulders shaking as the guests stare, their eyes wide, their faces pale, their expressions a mix of awe, fear, and morbid curiosity. "You want to talk about charity," Emma says, her voice rising, each word a hammer blow, her eyes blazing as she straightens, her heels clicking against the floor as she turns to face the crowd. "Because tonight, the real charity case isn't me. It's her." Gasps ripple through the crowd, eyes darting to Vanessa, who sinks lower, her face crumpling, her hands flying to her mouth as another sob racks her body. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa whispers, her voice thin, shaky, desperate, her eyes wide, bloodshot, frantic. Emma smiles, slow, dangerous, her eyes glinting like shards of broken glass. "You see," Emma says, her voice carrying, echoing through the grand hall like a queen's decree. "I didn't just buy the real estate firm your father's been trying to secure a deal with. I bought his entire debt portfolio." Vanessa's breath catches, her eyes going impossibly wider, her chest heaving, her heart slamming against her ribs like a sledgehammer. "No," she chokes out, her head shaking, her tears streaming down her cheeks, her voice breaking. "You can't." "Oh, but I can," Emma says, her smile widening, her eyes darkening, her jaw set, her fists clenched. "And as of tonight, I hold every loan, every contract, every lease your father's company has signed in the last 5 years." The crowd erupts in shocked murmurs, eyes darting to Vanessa, whose knees buckle, her body collapsing against the marble, her hands clutching her chest as though she's trying to hold herself together, to keep from falling apart completely. "Please," Vanessa sobs, her voice a broken, desperate plea, her shoulders shaking, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. "Please, Emma, don't do this. My father, he'll lose everything. I'll lose everything." Emma steps closer, her heels clicking, her eyes burning as she stares down at Vanessa, the woman who poured champagne down her dress, the woman who called her a beggar, the woman who tried to strip her of her dignity in front of everyone. "You see," Emma says, her voice a soft, deadly purr, each word dripping with venom, each syllable a nail driving deeper and deeper into Vanessa's coffin. "The thing about power is that it can change hands in the blink of an eye, and tonight, it just did." Vanessa's sobs echo through the hall, the sound a hollow, haunting refrain that bounces off the walls, reverberating through the room like a ghost's wail. Emma straightens, her chest rising and falling, her heart pounding, her jaw tight, her eyes blazing as she turns to face the crowd, her voice carrying, strong, unyielding, powerful. "So, the next time you decide to humiliate someone because of what they're wearing," Emma says, her eyes sweeping the room, her gaze locking onto each and every person who laughed, who sneered, who pointed. "Remember this moment. Remember how quickly the tables can turn. Because the girl you thought was nothing just took back everything you tried to take from her. And now, she owns you. And as the crowd stares, as the whispers rise, as Vanessa's sobs echo through the grand hall like the death knell of a fallen queen, Emma turns, her head high, her heels clicking against the marble as she walks away, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, her pulse roaring in her ears. Because tonight, the girl they laughed at just became the queen they fear. Vanessa's sobs echo through the grand hall, each ragged gasp a haunting, hollow sound that slices through the suffocating silence like a knife. The guests stand frozen, their faces pale, their eyes wide, their breaths held as they watch Vanessa crumble, her manicured nails clawing at the cold marble, her shoulders shaking, her once perfect curls now a tangled mess around her face. "Please!" Vanessa chokes out, her mascara streaking down her cheeks like black rivers, her lips trembling, her hands reaching out desperately, grasping for anything to hold on to as the world collapses beneath her. "Please, Emma, don't do this. My father. He'll lose everything. I'll lose everything." Emma's jaw clenches, her eyes dark, unyielding, her breath coming in slow, controlled bursts as she stands tall, her spine straight, her head high, her fists clenched at her sides. "You should have thought about that," Emma says, her voice sharp as a blade, each word striking like a whip. "Before you poured champagne down my dress, before you called me a beggar, before you humiliated me in front of everyone." Vanessa's lips quiver, a strangled sob escaping her throat as she shakes her head, her eyes wild, bloodshot, filled with terror. But it was just a joke." Vanessa sputters, her words stumbling over each other, her chest heaving. I didn't know." "Oh, you meant every word," Emma snaps, her eyes flashing, her jaw tightening, her fists trembling as she steps closer, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown clock ticking down to Vanessa's execution. "And now, you're going to feel what it's like to be the one on the floor, the one begging, the one everyone laughs at." The crowd watches in stunned silence, their eyes darting between Emma and Vanessa, their whispers rising like a dark, suffocating fog, the air thick with the scent of champagne and fear. "Did you hear what she said?" A man whispers, his eyes wide, his face pale as he glances at his wife. "Emma owns everything, the building, the firm, the debt. She could ruin Vanessa's father," the woman murmurs, her gaze fixed on Vanessa's shaking form, her lips curving into a cruel, satisfied smirk. "And after tonight, she just might—" Vanessa's breath comes in sharp, ragged gasps, her hands shaking as she presses her palms against the marble, struggling to push herself to her feet, her knees wobbling, her heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Please, Emma!" Vanessa sobs, her eyes wide, glistening with tears, her voice cracking. "You don't understand. My father, he's already in debt. If I call in those loans," Emma says, her voice cold, hard, unrelenting, her gaze cutting through Vanessa like a blade. "Your father's company will sink, and you'll have nothing." Vanessa shakes her head, her tears spilling over, her breath coming in short. Shallow bursts as she clutches Emma's hand, her nails digging into Emma's skin. "Please," Vanessa whispers, her voice breaking, her eyes filled with desperation, fear, hopelessness. "I'm begging you." Emma stares down at her, her jaw clenched, her chest rising and falling, her pulse roaring in her ears as she rips her hand free, her gaze hard as stone. "You humiliated me," Emma says, her voice low, deadly, each word a knife slicing through the air. "You made me feel like I was nothing. And now, you want me to save you." Vanessa's sobs intensify, her shoulders shaking, her chest heaving as she collapses back against the marble, her hands flying to her face, her nails digging into her scalp as the reality of her downfall slams into her like a tidal wave. "Oh my God," a woman whispers, her hand flying to her mouth, her eyes wide as she watches Vanessa crumble. The queen of the night brought to her knees, the woman they all fawned over now, nothing but a sobbing, shaking shell. "She's lost everything," another man murmurs, his gaze fixed on Emma, his eyes filled with awe, fear, and reverence. And Emma, she just took it all. Emma takes a deep breath, her heart pounding, her fists shaking, her eyes burning as she turns away from Vanessa, her heels clicking against the marble as she walks away, her head high, her back straight, her dress still stained with champagne, the dark, sticky liquid clinging to her like a second skin, a badge of honor. "What are you going to do?" Jonathan asks, stepping up beside her, his eyes dark, his jaw clenched, his fists trembling at his sides. Emma's breath hitches, her chest rising and falling, her pulse roaring in her ears as she looks straight ahead, her gaze fixed on the grand double doors, the exit that now feels like the entrance to a new life. "What I should have done the first time they tried to destroy me," Emma says, her voice low, hard, resolute. "I'm going to show them what real power looks like." And as she strides through the crowd, the guests part for her like the sea splitting open, their eyes wide, their breaths held, their whispers rising like a haunting, relentless refrain. And tonight, the girl they all tried to break just took back everything they stole from her, and now she's going to use it to make them pay. The grand hall is still humming with whispers, eyes darting between Emma and Vanessa, the air thick with the scent of fear, champagne, and shattered egos. Emma walks through the crowd, her spine straight, her gaze cold, her heels clicking against the marble like the steady beat of a war drum. Eyes follow her, heads bow, the same people who once sneered at her now parting like the sea, their faces pale, their breaths held, their whispers sharp as knives. "Did you see Vanessa?" a man murmurs, his champagne glass trembling in his hand. "She's ruined." And Emma, another woman says, her voice low, hushed, fearful. "She owns it all now." Emma's jaw clenches, her chest rising and falling, her pulse roaring in her ears as she scans the room, her eyes searching, searching. And then she sees her. Lily, the young woman who had quietly handed Emma a napkin to wipe the champagne from her dress, her eyes kind, her voice soft, was the only person in the room who had treated her like a human being. Lily stands off to the side, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her eyes downcast, her shoulders hunched as if trying to make herself invisible. Emma moves toward her, each step deliberate, each breath heavy, the crowd watching, their eyes wide, their whispers rising. "Lily," Emma says, her voice soft but strong, each word carrying, echoing through the hall, slicing through the tension like a blade. Lily's head snaps up, her eyes widening, her lips parting as she stares at Emma, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. "Miss Kingsley," she stammers, her cheeks flushing, her gaze darting nervously around the room. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize." "You didn't need to know," Emma says, her jaw tight, her eyes fierce, her hands clenched at her sides. "You were the only person in this entire room who treated me with respect. The only one who saw a girl in a soaked dress and offered her kindness instead of cruelty." Lily's eyes fill with tears, her lower lip quivering, her breath hitching as she shakes her head, her hands shaking. "I just thought—" "You thought I was a nobody," Emma says, her voice dropping, her gaze softening, her fists unclenching as she steps closer, her hands reaching out to grasp Lily's, her fingers warm, strong, grounding, "and you still treated me like I mattered." Lily's tears spill over, sliding down her cheeks as she stares at Emma, her chest heaving, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. "Thank you," Emma says, her voice a soft, fierce murmur, her eyes locked onto Lily's, her heart pounding. "Thank you for reminding me that not everyone here is rotten." Lily chokes back a sob, her shoulders shaking, her hands gripping Emma's like a lifeline. "You were the only one who saw me," Emma whispers, her voice breaking, her throat tightening. "And now, I'm going to make sure everyone sees you." The crowd watches, eyes wide, jaws slack, breaths held as Emma steps back, her spine straightening, her chin lifting, her eyes blazing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emma says, her voice ringing out, strong, commanding, a queen addressing her subjects, "I'd like to introduce you all to Lily Harper." The the new director of community outreach for Kingsley Properties. Gasps ripple through the room, eyes widening, mouths dropping open, cameras flashing as Lily's hands fly to her mouth, her eyes going impossibly wide, her chest heaving. "Miss Kingsley?" Lily whispers, her voice breaking, her eyes brimming with tears. You can," Emma says, her voice firm, her gaze fierce, her hands reaching out to grip Lily's shoulders, her fingers squeezing, grounding. "You deserve this. You've always deserved more than what they gave you. And now, you're going to get it." Lily sobs, her shoulders shaking, her knees buckling as Emma pulls her into a fierce, unbreakable hug, her arms wrapping around the woman who saw her when no one else did. The crowd erupts in applause, the sound crashing over them like a wave, the same people who sneered at Lily now clapping, nodding, eyes shining with admiration. Or is it fear? And as Emma holds Lily tight, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, her eyes burning with unshed tears, she finally feels it. The power she's spent her whole life fighting to claim, and tonight, she's not just claiming it for herself. She's using it to lift up the people who helped her rise. Because real power isn't in taking revenge. It's in using your throne to build a kingdom where kindness is the crown. And tonight, Emma Kingsley just crowned her first queen. The applause fades, the crowd stills, and the air hangs heavy with tension as Emma steps forward, her heels clicking against the marble, her heart pounding, her chest rising and falling as she takes center stage beneath the dazzling chandelier. The guests stand frozen, their eyes fixed on her, their breaths held, their faces a sea of shame and guilt, each one a reflection of the cruelty they just witnessed, the cruelty they participated in. Vanessa remains on the floor, her mascara-streaked face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking, her sobs echoing through the grand hall like the last gasps of a fallen queen. Emma swallows, her fists clenched at her sides, her jaw tight, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, taking in every face, every pair of eyes that once sneered at her, that once looked at her like she was nothing. "You all looked at me tonight," Emma says, her voice low, strong, ringing through the room like a bell tolling for the dead. "You looked at my dress, my shoes, my hair, and you decided I wasn't worth your time." Heads lower, eyes drop, champagne glasses tremble in hands that suddenly feel too heavy, too cold. "You looked at me and saw a girl in a cheap dress." Emma continues, her voice rising, each word a hammer blow, each syllable a knife slicing through the silence. "You looked at me and decided I was nothing, a nobody, a girl who didn't belong here." Her gaze locks onto Vanessa, who lifts her tear-soaked face, her red-rimmed eyes wide, desperate, empty, her lips quivering as she stares up at the woman she tried to break. "But what you didn't see," Emma says, her voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper, her eyes flashing, her jaw clenching, was the girl who once stood in this very building, scrubbing floors, cleaning toilets, serving drinks to people like you, people who walked by without even glancing at her. Gasps ripple through the crowd, eyes widening, jaws dropping, whispers rising like a dark, suffocating fog as Emma's words sink in, as the reality of who she is crashes over them like a tidal wave. "Yes," Emma says, her voice sharp, her eyes fierce, her chest heaving, "I was the maid, the girl you didn't see, the girl you dismissed, the girl you laughed at." Vanessa's breath catches, a strangled sob escaping her throat as she shakes her head, her fingers digging into the marble, her eyes brimming with fresh tears. "But tonight," Emma continues, her voice rising, her gaze sweeping the room, each word a bullet, each sentence a gunshot. "I am the woman who owns the very building you're standing in. I am the woman who now holds the contracts, the leases, the keys to your precious little world." The crowd shifts, uneasily, nervously, eyes darting to one another, whispers growing louder, faster, sharper, the air thick with the scent of fear, desperation, panic. "And the thing about people like me," Emma says, her voice dropping to a venomous purr, her eyes narrowing, her lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile, "is that we don't forget." Vanessa sobs, her shoulders shaking, her hands clutching her hair, her chest heaving as Emma steps closer, her heels clicking against the marble, each step a death knell, each breath a countdown. "We don't forget the people who tried to break us," Emma says, her voice soft, deadly, a razor-sharp whisper that cuts through the air like a blade. "We don't forget the people who poured champagne down our dresses and called us beggars. We don't forget the people who laughed while we stood there, soaked and humiliated, fighting to keep our heads above water." The crowd is silent now, the whispers dead, the air still, heavy, suffocating, the weight of Emma's words pressing down like a crushing tidal wave. "But what you all forgot," Emma says, her voice rising, her eyes blazing, her fists clenched, "is that the girl you called a nobody is the girl who built her empire from the ground up. The girl you tried to drown is the girl who learned how to breathe underwater." Vanessa sobs, her face buried in her hands, her knees scraping against the marble, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps as Emma takes one last step forward, her face inches from Vanessa's, her voice dropping to a low, lethal whisper. "So, the next time you decide to laugh at someone because of what they're wearing, what they're driving, where they came from," Emma says, her eyes dark, her jaw tight, her fists shaking, "remember this moment. Remember the girl in the cheap dress who now holds your life in the palm of her hand." Vanessa's sobs echo through the hall, the sound a hollow, haunting refrain that bounces off the walls, reverberating through the room like a ghost's wail. Emma straightens, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, her gaze sweeping the room one last time, her eyes burning, her lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile. "Because power," Emma says, her voice carrying, strong, unyielding, a queen's decree, isn't about what you wear or what you own. It's about who you are when the world tries to break you. It's about what you do when they pour champagne down your dress and tell you to get back in your place. Emma steps back, her head high, her spine straight, her chest rising and falling as the crowd stares, stunned, speechless, breathless, as the girl they tried to destroy now stands before them, unbroken, unbowed, unyielding. And tonight, she's not just the girl in the cheap dress. She's the queen who just reminded them all what true power really looks like. The room is heavy with silence, the echoes of Emma's words hanging like a storm cloud above them, each drop a reminder of the cruelty they unleashed, each beat of silence a knife twisting in their guilty hearts. Emma steps back from Vanessa, her chest heaving, her eyes burning, her fists still clenched as she turns away, her heels striking the marble like a queen's drum roll, a victory march. The guests part for her, their heads bowed, their eyes downcast, shame pooling in their cheeks, the same people who sneered and laughed now reduced to a sea of bowed heads and hushed whispers. "Did you hear what she said?" A man whispers, his voice trembling, his champagne glass shaking in his hand. "She was the maid, the one we all—" "And now she owns it all," a woman murmurs, her eyes wide, her face pale as she watches Emma walk away, her spine straight, her head high, her dress still stained with champagne, the dark streaks now a badge of honor, a queen's battle scars. Emma keeps walking, her breaths heavy, her pulse roaring in her ears, her vision blurring as the room spins around her, the chandelier lights glaring like 1,000 burning suns. But then she sees her, Lily, the young woman with kind eyes, standing in the corner, her hands clasped tightly in front of her lower lip trembling, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Emma's breath catches, her jaw tightening, her fists unclenching as she moves toward Lily, her heels clicking against the marble, her heart pounding in her chest like a caged animal. "Lily," Emma says, her voice soft, breathless, each word heavy, raw, aching. Lily's eyes snap up, her breath hitching, her hands flying to her mouth as she stares at Emma, her face crumpling, a sob escaping her throat. "Miss Kingsley," she whispers, her shoulders shaking, her tears spilling over, her breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize." "You didn't need to know," Emma says, her voice breaking, her throat tight, her eyes burning as she reaches out, her hands grasping Lily's, her fingers warm, firm, grounding. You were the only one in that entire room who saw me, the only one who treated me like a human being. Lily sobs, her knees buckling, her shoulders shaking as she collapses against Emma, her arms wrapping around her, her tears soaking into Emma's dress. The champagne stain, now a symbol of what she's endured, what she's survived. "Thank you," Emma whispers, her voice a raw, broken murmur, her hands stroking Lily's hair, holding her tight, holding her together. "Thank you for seeing me." The crowd watches, eyes wide, jaws slack, whispers rising like a dark, suffocating fog. The same people who once mocked Emma now, staring in stunned silence as she holds the one person who showed her kindness. Vanessa watches from the floor, her shoulders slumped, her chest heaving, her hands shaking as she stares at Emma, her eyes hollow, haunted, and empty. The queen has fallen, and now she's nothing but a ghost in a golden gown, a shell of the woman she once was. The crowd that once worshipped her now turning their backs, their eyes fixed on Emma, the girl they tried to destroy, the girl who now stands above them, untouchable, unbreakable. Emma pulls back, her hands cupping Lily's face, her thumbs brushing away her tears, her lips curving into a soft, gentle smile, her eyes warm, shining. "You're going to be okay," Emma says, her voice a fierce, unyielding promise. "I'm going to make sure of it." Lily sobs, her chin trembling, her eyes brimming with gratitude, with relief, with awe. And as Emma steps back, her heart still pounding, her chest still heaving, her eyes still burning, she turns to the crowd, her gaze sweeping over them, each face a mask of shame, of fear, of stunned silence. "So," Emma says, her voice calm, steady, echoing through the hall like a queen's decree. "Who's next?" The crowd shifts uneasily, eyes darting to the floor, feet shuffling, breaths held, the air thick with the scent of fear, of desperation, of reckoning. Emma's eyes lock onto Vanessa, who still sits crumpled on the floor, her mascara-streaked face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking, her breaths coming in short, shallow gasps. "Vanessa," Emma says, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper, her eyes dark, her jaw tight. "I gave you a chance. I gave you a chance to be kind, to be human, and you threw it away." Vanessa sobs, her hands flying to her hair, her fingers clawing at her scalp, her eyes wild, desperate, broken. "Please," she chokes out, her voice cracking, her breath hitching, her chest heaving. "Please, Emma, I'm begging you." Emma steps closer, her heels clicking against the marble, each step a death knell, each breath a countdown. "You called me a nobody," Emma says, her voice a soft, lethal purr, her eyes blazing, her lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile. "You tried to make me feel small. You tried to tear me down." Vanessa's sobs echo through the hall, the sound a hollow, haunting refrain that bounces off the walls, reverberating through the room like a ghost's wail. "And now," Emma says, her voice rising, fierce, powerful, each word a hammer blow, each syllable a bullet, "you're the one on the floor." The crowd watches, breathless, eyes wide, jaws slack, as Emma straightens, her chest heaving, her spine straight, her chin lifted, her heart pounding like a war drum. And tonight, the girl in the cheap dress isn't just the girl they tried to break. She's the queen who just took back her throne, and now she's going to make them all bow. The room is heavy, suffocating, every breath a struggle, every beat of silence a thunderous echo as Emma stands tall, her gaze sweeping the room, her eyes dark, unyielding, her chin lifted like a queen who has finally reclaimed her crown. The guests stand frozen, their faces pale, their eyes wide, their bodies tense as they wait for the final blow, the final judgment, the reckoning they all know is coming. Vanessa is still on the floor, her mascara-streaked face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking, her breaths coming in sharp, jagged sobs as she rocks back and forth. The queen dethroned, the woman who once ruled them all, now nothing but a broken, shattered shell. Emma takes a deep breath, her fists clenching at her sides, her nails digging into her palms as she steps forward, her heels striking the marble like gunshots, her chest heaving, her heart pounding, her pulse a relentless, deafening drumbeat. "Look around," Emma says, her voice low, fierce, carrying through the grand hall like a queen addressing her court, her words cutting through the silence like a blade. "Look around and remember this moment, because tonight, you all laughed at me. You all pointed and sneered and poured champagne down my dress because you thought I was nothing. Eyes lower, heads bow, shoulders slump as shame crashes over them like a tidal wave, as Emma's words slice through the room like a blade, as her gaze sweeps over them, unrelenting, unmerciful. "You called me a beggar," Emma says, her voice rising, her eyes flashing, her jaw tightening. "You said I didn't belong here. You said I was a nobody. But what you didn't know, what you never even bothered to ask, is that I am the woman who owns everything you're standing on. I am the woman who holds every contract, every loan, every lease your precious little empires depend on." Gasps ripple through the crowd, champagne glasses slipping from shaking hands, crystal shattering against the marble like the sound of 1,000 dreams crumbling to dust. "So now," Emma continues, her voice dropping to a low, venomous purr, her gaze locking onto Vanessa, who lifts her tear-soaked face, her eyes wide, wild, desperate. "I want you all to look at Vanessa. Look at her. Look at the woman who just tried to destroy me. Look at the woman who poured champagne down my dress, called me a beggar, and laughed in my face." Vanessa sobs, her hands flying to her face, her shoulders shaking as she collapses against the marble, her chest heaving, her breaths coming in short, ragged gasps. "And now," Emma says, her voice dropping to a deadly, lethal whisper, her gaze burning like a flame, her fists shaking, "I want you to look at me. Look at the girl you called a nobody, the girl you tried to destroy, the girl who just took back everything you tried to take from her." The room is silent, the air thick, heavy, oppressive, every pair of eyes locked onto Emma, the girl they tried to break, the girl they tried to humiliate, the girl who now stands above them all, unbroken, untouchable, unstoppable. Emma takes a deep breath, her chest heaving, her pulse roaring in her ears as she lifts her chin, her eyes blazing, her jaw set like stone. "So, the next time you decide to laugh at someone because of what they're wearing, or where they came from," Emma says, her voice carrying, strong, unyielding, every word a hammer blow, every syllable a bullet, "remember tonight, remember me. Remember the girl in the cheap dress who just reminded you all that real power isn't about what you wear or what you own. It's about what you survive. It's about who you become when the world tries to tear you apart." Vanessa sobs, her shoulders shaking, her breaths coming in short, shallow gasps as Emma steps back, her head high, her chest heaving, her eyes dark, fierce, blazing. "And tonight," Emma says, her voice dropping to a low, lethal murmur, her eyes fixed on Vanessa, her lips curving into a slow, dangerous smile. "The girl you all tried to destroy just became the queen you'll all bow to." The room is still, the silence heavy, crushing, suffocating as Emma turns, her heels clicking against the marble like a victory march, her head held high, her shoulders squared, her heart pounding as she walks away. The girl they called a nobody, now the queen who holds the keys to their entire kingdom. And as Emma steps into the night, the cold air biting against her skin, the city lights glistening like a sea of fallen stars, the final line appears on the screen, bold, unrelenting, a haunting, chilling reminder: never judge a woman by the dress she wears. Because the real queen doesn't need a crown to remind you who she is.